Hello, everyone. My name is Eleanor Hart, and I'm 65 years old. 2 weeks ago, I buried my sweet husband Samuel after 38 years of marriage. He passed from a heart attack at age 67. Last Saturday, I attended my nephew Theo's first birthday party at my sister Vivian's house. That's when Vivian stood up and shocked everyone. She announced that Theo was actually Sam's son, waving around what she claimed was his last will. She demanded half of our $800,000 home as Theo's inheritance. I nearly choked on my cake trying not to laugh out loud. You see, there was something Vivian didn't know about Sam. I'll tell you everything. First, let me thank you for watching Stories of Auntie May 365. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout-out in our next video. Today's special shout-out goes to Karen James from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for being part of our family. Now let me tell you everything. Sam and I first met 40 years ago at our local Lakeview Community Church bake sale. I was selling my famous apple pies when he approached my table. He bought 3 whole pies claiming they were for his mother, but later confessed he just wanted an excuse to talk to me. "These smell like heaven," he said with the sweetest smile. "Just like the baker." That was Sam, charming and kind to everyone he met. Our first date was the very next evening at Miller's Diner downtown. We talked until the restaurant closed, sharing stories about our families and dreams. Sam worked as a school principal dedicated to helping children learn and grow. He remembered every student's name and always asked about their families. 2 years later, he proposed during our church's Christmas service, right there in front of everyone. The whole congregation started clapping and cheering. We married the following spring in that same little church, surrounded by friends and family who had watched our love story bloom. We bought our first home together after our second anniversary. It was a cozy 2-story house on Lakeview Drive for $200,000, which felt like a fortune back then. Sam had just been promoted to superintendent, and I was teaching 3rd grade at the elementary school. The house had a big backyard with an old oak tree perfect for a tire swing. We spent weekends painting rooms and planting flowers, dreaming of the children who would someday play in that yard under the oak tree's shade. But those children never came, no matter how much we hoped and prayed. For 10 long years, we visited doctors and tried everything they suggested. We saved money for special treatments and followed every piece of advice. I still remember our last doctor's visit. Sitting in that cold waiting room holding Sam's hand, the doctor told us that having children might not be possible for us. The drive home was silent, both of us lost in our own thoughts and broken dreams. That evening, Sam took my hands and said, "Eleanor, we have each other, and that's more than many people ever get. Our love is enough to fill any house." He meant every word. We slowly learned to find joy in different ways. We traveled to places we'd only seen in magazines. We became the favorite aunt and uncle to all our nieces and nephews. Sam poured his heart into his students, treating each one like his own child. Our home became the gathering place for holidays and celebrations. My younger sister Vivian was always the dramatic one in our family. 3 years younger than me at 62, she had always lived life like she was on stage. While I was teaching and Sam was working with schools, Vivian jumped from job to job and man to man. Our parents, June and Harold Cole, worried about her constantly always sending her money when she got into trouble. Vivian and I had a strange relationship growing up. She was beautiful and outgoing, the kind of person everyone noticed when she walked into a room. But she always seemed jealous of what I had. If I got a new dress, Vivian needed a better one. When Sam and I bought our house, Vivian complained for months about her tiny apartment until our parents helped her move somewhere nicer. When I got promoted at school, Vivian suddenly decided she wanted to be a teacher too. Though she never followed through, it was tiring, but Sam always encouraged me to be patient with her. "She's your only sister," he would remind me. Family forgives family. 5 years ago, Vivian started dating Jake Martin, a mechanic she met at a bar. Jake was good-looking in a rough way with oil-stained hands and a pickup truck our parents didn't approve of. Their relationship was like a soap opera with big fights followed by passionate makeups. Then came the surprise pregnancy announcement at Easter dinner 3 years ago. Vivian had never wanted children, often saying kids would ruin her figure and her freedom. Yet there she was, dramatically announcing she was going to be a mother while fake crying into her napkin. I felt a familiar pang of sadness mixed with happiness. After all our struggles and heartbreak, Vivian had accidentally gotten what Sam and I had desperately wanted for years, but I pushed those bitter feelings away and focused on being excited for her. I was determined to be the best aunt possible to this little one. The crowd froze in that unbearable silence, the kind that follows an explosion. My sister's words hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. "Half the house belongs to Theo." Vivian declared, her tone triumphant. "It's what Sam wanted. The sun was too bright, the balloons too colorful." The laughter from moments ago curdled into whispers. I looked at her, my little sister, standing there in her designer dress, pretending to be the widow of my husband, and I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile nor a nervous one. It was the sort of smile that appears when the body forgets how to cry. "May I take a look at this, will Vivian?" I asked, my voice quiet but perfectly steady. She blinked clearly, not expecting calmness. Slowly, she handed me the paper. It took me less than 10 seconds to see it. Wrong phrasing, wrong date, wrong everything. Sam's name bent in unfamiliar loops. He'd never made an S like that. Fake, sloppy, amateur. "Thank you," I said, folding the paper neatly and returning it. "I think I'll head home now." She stared confused, her bravado faltering. "You're not going to not hear." And I turned my back on her. Behind me, the crowd began murmuring again. My parents avoided my eyes. People moved aside like the Red Sea parting for Moses. Inside my chest, something cracked, something small but dangerous. By the time I reached my car, my hands were trembling. When the door closed, I finally exhaled. The sound that escaped my throat wasn't laughter or sobbing, something in between. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My lipstick had smudged slightly. My eyes looked older, colder. "She thinks she's won," I whispered to the empty car. "She has no idea," because I knew something Vivian didn't. Sam could never have fathered Theo. The drive home blurred past familiar houses, the lake shimmering under the late afternoon sun. But inside me, everything was changing. At home, I placed my purse down, locked the door, and sank into Sam's old armchair. The scent of his aftershave still lingered faintly in the fabric. For a moment, I felt dizzy grief mixing with rage, a cocktail too potent to swallow. My mind replayed the scene at the party over and over, the smug tone, the paper, the gasps, my father's face turning pale. And then, a new image. Sam's eyes, soft and steady, the day before his surgery. "Eleanor," he had said, "promise me something. If anything ever happens, don't let them destroy what we built." At the time, I thought he meant our house. Now I knew better. I rose and walked to the study. On the top shelf behind an old photo album was a small iron key, the one for our safety deposit box at Lakeview Community Bank. Sam had insisted we open it years ago for emergencies only. I used to tease him for being too cautious. Tonight, I didn't laugh. I set the key on my desk next to the wedding photo where Sam was smiling, the lake glittering behind us. "We're not done yet," I murmured. Outside, thunder rumbled, distant but real. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain tapping against the window. Around 2 a.m., I rose to make tea. That's when I noticed the envelope slipped under my front door. No return address, no name, just my first name written in tight, unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single line typed on plain white paper. "Check the dates before you bury the truth." No signature, no clue. My heart stuttered. Who would send this? Someone who knew about Vivian's lie or someone who wanted me to? Either way, it meant one thing: I wasn't alone in this storm. I folded the note carefully and placed it inside Sam's old Bible on the nightstand. I didn't know why, but it felt right. Then I turned off the light. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I showered, dressed, and tied my hair back with precision. Not vanity, but armor. Grief had taken enough from me. It wouldn't take my composure. At 9 a.m., I walked into Lakeview Community Bank, greeted by the familiar scent of coffee and polished wood. The manager, Mrs. Williams, recognized me instantly. "Mrs. Hart," she said softly. "I'm so sorry about Mr. Hart. He was one of our favorites." "Thank you," I said, forcing a polite smile. "I just need access to our box." In the private viewing room, I opened the metal container. Inside lay exactly what I expected, and something I didn't. On top was Sam's real will neatly sealed and notarized, naming me as sole heir. Beneath it, his medical records from Dr. Martinez, confirming the surgery that had left him unable to father children. But under those papers was a third envelope, one I had never seen before. It was addressed to me in Sam's careful handwriting. My breath caught as I opened it. "My dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, something's gone wrong. I hope it's years from now, but if it isn't, know that I love you more than life itself. There may come a time when someone uses my name for their gain. Don't panic. You'll find the truth here. Protect yourself and protect our legacy. Love always." Sam tears blurred the ink. My hands trembled. But underneath the sorrow, something else pulsed clarity. Sam had foreseen this. Maybe not the details, but the danger. He'd known someone, maybe even Vivian, would try something desperate. When I left the bank, the morning sun had broken through the clouds. Everything looked sharper, more defined. I drove straight home, placed the will and documents into a folder, and locked them in my desk drawer. Then I opened my laptop and began typing a list, calm, deliberate. Contact Arthur Bennett. Confirm authenticity of documents. Find a private investigator, discreet and trustworthy. Don't confront Vivian yet. Watch, listen, wait. Each word steadied me. I wasn't the same woman who had walked into that party. I was no longer merely the grieving widow. I was a storm with perfect posture. That night, as I stood by the window watching the lake shimmer under the moonlight, I whispered, "You wanted a war." Vivian. "You just started one." The reflection staring back at me didn't look frightened anymore. It looked calculating. And for the first time since Sam's death, I wasn't scared. I was ready. If your own sister accused you of adultery with your dead husband, would you stay silent like Eleanor? Or would you strike back, comment 0 for stay silent 1, for strike back? The house was silent when I returned from the bank. No laughter, no music, only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft creak of the old oak floor. In my hands, I carried the truth, Sam's real will, his medical records, and the letter, the one he'd written in his gentle, familiar script, knowing that someday I might need it. I set everything on the dining table and stared at it for a long time. The afternoon sun streamed through the lace curtains, turning the paper golden. For a brief moment, it felt as though Sam was sitting across from me again, smiling, reassuring, patient. But he wasn't. He was gone. And yet in that moment, I could feel him closer than ever. I unfolded the letter again, tracing the ink where he had written my name. "My dearest Ellie." The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. He'd known. Somehow he'd known this day would come, when love would be twisted into accusation, when our home would be threatened by the one person I still called family. It wasn't the loss that broke me. It was the foresight. Sam had spent his last years not only loving me, but protecting me, building quiet walls of evidence, crafting a safety net of truth for a future he feared might arrive too soon. I pressed the paper to my chest, whispering, "You always were the wiser one." The ache that had hollowed me out for weeks began to shift, not disappearing, but reshaping itself into something new, something solid. That night, I sat by the fireplace, the letter beside me, the room wrapped in the amber glow of candlelight. Outside, the lake shimmered like liquid silver beneath the moon. I reached for my phone, an old habit I hadn't yet shaken. I used to call Sam when I couldn't sleep, even if he was only in the next room. Without thinking, I opened my voicemail. The first few messages were ordinary reminders, grocery lists, an old inside joke. Then I found one I hadn't heard before, dated just a few days before his heart attack. "Hey Ellie, just checking in. You were right, I probably shouldn't have that second helping of chili tonight." A soft laugh followed. "Anyway, I love you. Don't stay up too late grading papers. See you soon." The sound of his voice shattered me and healed me all at once. It wasn't just a voicemail anymore. It was a promise, proof that love could survive even death. And with that realization came the awakening I hadn't expected. If love could outlast life, then so could duty. Sam had left me the truth. Now it was my turn to defend it. The next morning I called Arthur Bennett, Sam's longtime attorney. His voice on the phone was kind but firm. "Mrs. Hart," he said, "I've been expecting your call." We met that afternoon in his office downtown, a space lined with dark bookshelves and the faint scent of cedar. He looked older than I remembered, his eyes full of the sort of sadness that only comes from losing good friends. I laid the documents on his desk. He examined each page, slowly nodding as he read. "This," he said, "tapping Sam's medical records changes everything. No judge will question the truth once this is presented." I exhaled, the tension easing from my shoulders. But Arthur wasn't finished. He leaned forward slightly. "There's more you should know, Eleanor. Sam came to see me 3 months before his death. He was worried about Vivian, about her financial situation, her instability. He asked me to keep an eye on things in case she ever tried to use his name for money." I stared at him. "You mean—" He suspected her. Arthur nodded slowly. He never accused her directly, but he had a feeling. He said, "Vivian is a woman who loves drama more than truth." The words hit me like a blade wrapped in velvet. Sam hadn't only prepared for this moment, he'd anticipated it down to the detail. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The rain returned, tapping against the windows like restless fingers. I made tea and sat by the window, watching lightning flicker over the lake. Somewhere out there, Vivian was probably celebrating her little victory, convinced I was broken. I wanted to hate her. But beneath the anger was something else, a strange sadness. Once she had been my little sister, the girl who borrowed my sweaters and cried over broken hearts. When had that sister turned into a stranger, willing to destroy everything I loved? The answer came quietly. Maybe she had always been that way, and I had just refused to see it. The thought ached, but it also cleared the fog that had clouded my heart. For years, I had been too kind, too forgiving. Now I was awake. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything, scanning Sam's letter, the real will, the forged one, the mysterious, anonymous note, and even screenshots of Vivian's texts I'd kept from years past. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about building a wall of truth so strong no lie could climb it. I had recently discovered a YouTube channel called Reddit Revenge Stories. I used to listen to it while cooking dinner, real people sharing tales of justice after betrayal. Back then, I'd thought those stories were extreme, even petty. Now I understood them completely. Grief makes philosophers. Betrayal makes strategists. And maybe, just maybe, I was about to become both. The next morning, I called Arthur again. "I need a private investigator," I told him. "Someone discreet. Someone who doesn't flinch easily." He paused, then said, "I know just the person." Her name was Paula Kane, a retired police detective with a reputation for getting results. We arranged to meet later that week. After hanging up, I looked around the quiet house. The flowers from Sam's funeral had wilted. His shoes still sat by the door. The ache returned, but it no longer paralyzed me. This pain was fuel now, sharp, clear, necessary. I played Sam's voicemail one more time before bed. His laughter filled the empty room like sunlight after a storm. "See you soon," he'd said. I smiled faintly. "Not yet, my love," I whispered. "I have work to do." Outside, the wind shifted. A new day was already waiting. 3 days later, Vivian arrived at my house exactly at 7. Rain fell in slow silver sheets, the kind that turn the world into blurred reflections. She stood on my porch wearing a pale trench coat, her makeup flawless, her expression calm, almost defiant. It reminded me of the way she looked as a child before lying to our parents. "Come in," I said. The warmth of the house swallowed her perfume and her nerves. I gestured toward the living room where two chairs faced each other across a small table. On it sat a recorder, a folder, and 2 glasses of water. "I hope you don't mind if I record this conversation," I said evenly, just to make sure I remember everything correctly. She hesitated, then gave a shallow laugh. "Of course. I've got nothing to hide." "Good," I said. "Let's begin." Vivian launched into her story like a well-rehearsed monologue. According to her, she and Sam had fallen into a secret affair during a lonely period of our marriage. She spoke with the precision of someone who'd told herself the lie so many times it had become truth. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. The longer she spoke, the more tangled her web became. "Sam told me he couldn't bear your coldness," she said at one point, her eyes flickering for a reaction. I offered none. She mistook my silence for weakness, her first mistake. When she finished, I waited for the quiet to stretch just long enough to make her uneasy. Then I leaned forward slightly. "Which motel did you say you met at the Sunset on Highway 9? She answered too quickly. "And the room number different each time." "Of course," I said, nodding. "And what car did Sam drive there?" "The gray Ford." I smiled faintly. "He sold that car 4 years ago." Her mouth twitched. "Maybe it was another one." "I don't remember." "Memory can be tricky," I said softly. "That's why I keep evidence." I opened the folder and placed Sam's medical records on the table. 3 years before your son was conceived, Sam underwent surgery for prostate cancer, I said. It left him unable to father children. "These documents are signed by Dr. Martinez and notarized by the hospital." Color drained from her face. "Eleanor, you can't." "I can," I interrupted. "And I will." Next came Sam's real will, verified and sealed. Then the forged version, the one she'd waved around at the birthday party like a trophy. I watched her expression shift from arrogance to panic. Each page I laid down was another stone on her chest. And then the final card, the part she didn't know existed. "Before you arrived," I said calmly, "I called Arthur Bennett. He arranged for a few people to join us remotely." I reached for the small remote beside the recorder and pressed play. A voice filled the room. Her voice. "Henry's death might be the answer to my prayers. If I can convince everyone Theo is his son, I'll get half the house. The fake will looks perfect." The words lifted from her text messages with her friend Carol echoed like a confession carved in glass. Vivian's lips trembled. You recorded me." "No," I said. "You recorded yourself." I let the silence that followed hang heavy like a verdict that needed no judge. For a long time, she stared at the documents, the recorder, the unrelenting truth, and then something inside her broke. Her shoulders collapsed. Her hands began to shake. "I was desperate," she whispered. "Jake left. The bills were endless." "I thought you thought destroying Sam's memory would fix your life," I said coldly. "You thought using his death would pay your rent." Her tears came fast now, mascara streaking like ink on wet paper. I didn't think it through. I just needed help. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. The satisfaction was sharp and clean like frost. For the first time, she wasn't performing. She was just human, small, flawed, pitiful. And that should have made me feel better. It didn't. Justice was intoxicating, yes, but lonely. Like winning a war and realizing there's no one left to celebrate with. "I should press charges," I said quietly. "Fraud, forgery, defamation. The evidence would destroy you." Vivian wiped her face, her voice shaking. "Please don't. I have Theo. He's innocent." I studied her for a long moment. "You're right," I said finally. "Theo is innocent. That's the only reason I'm giving you a choice." Her eyes flickered, hopeful and afraid. "You will tell everyone the truth, that you lied about Sam, that you forged the will, that you tried to manipulate me. You'll make a public statement and I'll witness it. In return, I won't send you to prison. You'll get help. For Theo's sake, not yours." She nodded slowly, the fight gone. "I'll do it." "I know you will," I said, and turned off the recorder. After she left, I sat alone in the living room. The rain had stopped, leaving the world outside cold and clear. The silence was different now, heavier but honest. I should have felt victorious. I'd exposed the lie, defended. Sam's name reclaimed our truth. But instead, I felt hollow, like justice had stripped away something soft inside me. The house echoed with memories, his laughter, his humming while cooking breakfast, his quiet "I love you" before falling asleep. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I could almost hear him. "You did what you had to," I imagined him saying, "but it's all right to be sad about it." And I was. Later that night, I wrote everything down: the confrontation, her confession, every piece of evidence. Not for revenge this time, but for record, for truth. As I typed, I remembered a podcast I'd once heard, Reddit Family Tales. It was full of stories where people exposed betrayal, where truth came at a price. I used to listen for entertainment. Now it felt like autobiography. Life, I realized, isn't so different from those Reddit family tales. Justice doesn't come free, and the cost is always someone's peace. When I finished documenting everything, I turned off the lamp and stood by the window. The moonlight spilled across the lake, cold and perfect. I whispered into the night, "We're even now, Sam. Your name is safe." But my voice trembled because deep down I knew, in saving him, I had lost a part of myself too. For days after the confrontation, Vivian barely left her apartment. The curtains stayed closed. The phone went unanswered. The world, loud, judgmental, merciless, pressed in from all sides, and she wanted no part of it. Her name had become a whisper of disgrace in town. Did you hear what she did to her sister? People murmured at the grocery store, at the post office, at church. Even those who pretended sympathy carried judgment in their eyes. But none of it hurt as much as the silence from her son. Theo had been staying with their parents while Vivian sorted things out. She'd told him only that Mommy had made a mistake. But children, even young ones, have a way of sensing the truth. When she called, he spoke softly, distantly. "When can I come home?" he'd asked once. "Soon, baby," she'd promised. Soon, but soon never came. On the 5th morning, a letter arrived. The envelope was cream-colored, sealed with Eleanor's careful handwriting. Vivian stared at it for a long time before opening it, afraid of what it might contain, another warning, another judgment. Instead, it read, "Vivian, the truth is out now, and nothing I do will change that. But I don't want Theo to grow up hating his mother. That would make all of this meaningless. If you're willing to rebuild, I'll help you, but only if you face what you've done and commit to changing. The offer still stands: counseling work and financial stability for Theo's sake. This is not forgiveness. Not yet. But it's a door. What you do with it is up to you." Eleanor Vivian pressed the letter to her chest. The words burned like salt on a wound, painful yet purifying. Her sister's grace was harder to bear than her anger had been. For the first time in years, Vivian felt something resembling shame, the real kind, not the defensive one that hides behind excuses. That afternoon, she went to her parents' house. Theo was playing in the living room with his toy cars, his blonde hair glinting in the sun. He looked up as she entered, hesitant, cautious. "Mommy." She knelt down, her heart breaking at the uncertainty in his voice. "Yes, sweetheart. Mommy's here." He came to her slowly, then wrapped his arms around her neck. The smell of his shampoo, the warmth of his small body, it was almost too much to bear. "Did I do something bad?" he whispered. Vivian froze. "No. No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. Grandpa said people are mad at you." Her throat tightened. "They are, honey, because I made some bad choices." He looked up at her with those clear, trusting eyes. "Like lying." The word hit like a hammer. She nodded. "Yes, like lying." Theo was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You can tell the truth now. Simple, innocent, unbearably wise." She hugged him tighter. tears finally spilling down her face. "I will," she whispered into his hair. "I promise." That night, after putting Theo to bed, Vivian sat in her parents' old study, the letter from Eleanor on the desk before her. Her mother, June, came in quietly with 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might need this," she said softly. Vivian looked up. "You should hate me." June shook her head. "I hate what you did, not who you are. There's a difference." Vivian laughed bitterly. "That's generous." Her mother sat across from her. "It's not generosity, it's survival. Families either learn mercy or they die by their own pride." Vivian stared at her tea, unable to meet her mother's eyes. "Eleanor says she'll help me rebuild. After what I did to her, why would she do that?" June smiled faintly. "Because she's more like your father than you think. He always said grace isn't weakness, it's discipline." That word discipline struck deep. Grace not as softness, but as strength. In the week that followed, Vivian began the slow work of repair. She attended counseling twice a week, learning to untangle the knot of envy and self-destruction that had ruled her for years. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't fast. The therapist, a woman named Dr. Lydia Crane, made her confront every justification she'd ever used. "So you blamed your sister's happiness for your failures," Dr. Crane said one afternoon. Vivian bristled. "I didn't blame her. I just felt entitled to what she had." Vivian's jaw tightened. "Maybe." Dr. Crane nodded. "And when you couldn't have it, you tried to destroy it. That's not envy, Vivian. That's despair wearing pride's clothes." Vivian wanted to argue, but she couldn't. She left that session shaking, but lighter somehow. Eleanor and Vivian began exchanging short emails, civil, cautious, but real. Each one was a test, a step across the ice. When Eleanor invited her for coffee one Saturday morning, Vivian almost declined. But something inside urged her to go. They met at the small cafe by Lakeview Park. Eleanor was already there, calm as always, a book beside her coffee. "Thank you for coming," she said. Vivian sat opposite her, hands trembling slightly. "You didn't have to reach out. I know," Eleanor said simply, "but I did." The conversation was quiet, layered with unspoken history. When Vivian apologized, it wasn't grand or theatrical, just a single tear, a steady gaze, and the words, "I was wrong." For the first time in months, Eleanor reached across the table and placed a hand over hers. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was human. Later, walking home, Vivian passed a small bookstore window. A display caught her eye, Reddit family tales, stories of redemption and grace. She smiled faintly. The irony wasn't lost on her. Maybe one day someone would tell her story, not the scandal, but the part where the villain tried to change, where the broken mother fought to become whole again for her child. And for once, she didn't dread the idea. That evening, she found Theo drawing in the living room. He held up a crayon sketch of 2 women holding hands beside a house. "That's you and Aunt Ellie," he said proudly. "I drew you happy again." Vivian felt her throat tighten. She knelt beside him, smoothing his hair. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "Maybe one day it'll really be true." He smiled. "It already is." And for the first time in a long, long time, she almost believed him. The years passed quietly after Eleanor's death. Lakeview changed new faces, new stores, new noise. But Vivian remained a silent monument to what had once been scandal, love, and forgiveness. Theo grew into a thoughtful young man studying architecture at the university. He had his father's kindness, but something of Eleanor's quiet, moral backbone. And though Vivian had spent years rebuilding her life, steady job, clean reputation, a soft kind of peace, she carried a loneliness that no redemption could erase. Grace had saved her, yes, but it had also aged her. Mercy is never free. One gray morning in November, a letter arrived. It came from Dean Harris at the university, sealed in formal ivory stationery. "Mrs. Cole, we thought you should know that your daughter-in-law, Camilla Reed, has been soliciting donations using your family name. She claims your endorsement for an art foundation under Theo's scholarship fund. The university is concerned about potential fraud. Vivian's breath caught. Camilla. Theo's wife of just 2 years, charming, brilliant, and with that dangerous kind of beauty that turns sympathy into leverage. She had sensed it the first time they met that Camilla's affection for Theo was performative, built on convenience and ambition. But she had said nothing, not wanting to cast shadows on her son's happiness. Now those shadows were calling her name. 2 days later, Vivian requested a private meeting. Camilla arrived on time, draped in black cashmere, smelling of luxury and false sincerity. They met at the cafe near Lakeview Park, the same one where Vivian had once sought reconciliation with Eleanor. The irony wasn't lost on her. Vivian, Camilla said with that soft, cultivated smile, "You look radiant as ever." "How are you holding up?" Vivian studied her for a moment, then placed the dean's letter on the table. "I'm holding up fine. You, on the other hand, might have some explaining to do." Camilla's smile didn't falter, but her eyes flickered quick calculating. "Oh, that," she said lightly, "a small misunderstanding. The university overreacted. I was just helping Theo's program get more visibility." "By forging my name?" Vivian asked quietly. Camilla's lips parted, faint indignation laced her tone. "I didn't forge anything. I merely borrowed your legacy. You're a respected name here, Vivian. You've rebuilt your image. Why not use it for something good?" Vivian laughed softly, not cruelly, but with the disbelief of someone who has already lived through worse. "You sound exactly like me 30 years ago," she said. "Back when I thought good intentions could justify manipulation." Camilla leaned back, her confidence returning. "You're overreacting. No one got hurt." Vivian looked out the window. The lake shimmered under the pale winter sun, cold and indifferent. "People always get hurt," she said. "Sometimes we just don't stay long enough to see it happen." Camilla sighed, crossing her legs, her tone turning sharper. "I know you've never liked me. You think I'm after Theo's money. But maybe you should ask yourself, what do you really have left to judge me with?" The words landed like frost. Vivian met her gaze steadily. "You think redemption makes me weak, don't you?" Camilla smiled thinly. "It makes you sentimental, and sentimentality is the slowest kind of death." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Two women separated by decades, but bound by the same hunger for control. Finally, Vivian said softly, "You mistake sentiment for restraint, and restraint for weakness. That's the same mistake I made before my world burned down." Camilla's expression shifted a flicker of something uncertain, almost frightened. Vivian leaned closer. Her voice dropped, calm but cutting. "I buried my sister. I watched my son rebuild from my ashes. And I learned something you haven't. You can outsmart everyone until you can't outlive your own reflection." The silence that followed was surgical. Camilla reached for her cup, her hand trembling slightly. "So what now?" she asked finally. "You'll expose me, ruin me, take pleasure in seeing me fall." Vivian shook her head. "No, that would make me you." Camilla frowned. "Then why call me here?" Vivian exhaled slowly. "Because someone once saved me when I didn't deserve it. I thought I might return the favor." From her purse, she pulled a folder neatly prepared, sealed. Inside were the documents that could exonerate Camilla from official charges if she corrected her actions, repaid the donations, and withdrew from the foundation immediately. Camilla stared at it, disbelief washing over her face. "You're serious, I'm old," Camilla, Vivian said with a sad smile. "Too old for revenge, but not too old to understand what happens when you let pride make your choices." Camilla took the folder but didn't open it. "Why would you help me?" Vivian's answer came without hesitation. "Because you remind me of everything I almost became." When Camilla left, the cafe felt suddenly enormous, echoing with ghosts of both women's silence. Vivian sat there a long time, hands around her empty cup, watching the sunlight shift across the lake. She thought of Eleanor of that letter years ago, offering mercy when humiliation would have been easier. She finally understood how heavy grace truly was. Mercy didn't absolve. It demanded more. It asked the wounded to become healers, the guilty to extend gentleness they'd once rejected. And that was the bitter cost of compassion. You give away what no one gave you, and you do it knowing it won't save everyone. That night, Vivian returned home and wrote in her journal something she hadn't done in years. Grace is not forgiveness. It is endurance. It is standing in front of cruelty and choosing not to become it. She closed the book, tears stinging her eyes, not from sadness, but from understanding. The clock struck 10. She turned off the lights and looked out at the quiet street, her reflection faint in the window glass, older, softer, but still unyielding. A week later, she received an email from the university. Camilla Reed has formally withdrawn her application and returned all funds. No charges will be filed. Vivian smiled faintly. Relief didn't come, only quiet inevitability. She walked to the window again, whispering to herself, "Some lessons are learned in whispers, not wars." Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of the lake, calm, endless, and achingly familiar. Paris smelled of rain and lilacs that afternoon. Vivian sat at a small café terrace on Rue Saint-Honoré, the kind of place where the waiters still wore pressed vests and the espresso came in cups no bigger than thimbles. It had been 3 months since she'd left Lakeview. Theo had insisted she go, "You've carried enough, Mom. It's time to breathe again." And so for the first time in her 70 years, she listened. She had rented a modest apartment near the Seine. From her balcony, she could see the top of the Eiffel Tower if she leaned far enough. Every evening she watched the city turn gold, and every morning she wrote. No one here knew who she was. No one whispered about the past. And that anonymity felt like grace. Her fingers traced the rim of the porcelain cup as she watched the people moving through the street, lovers, holding hands, children chasing pigeons, an old man sketching by the fountain. For the first time in decades, she wasn't anyone's villain, victim, or redeemer. She was simply a woman alive, aging, quietly free. The world had continued without her judgment, without her penance. And that realization, rather than stinging, felt like release. She had spent too many years defining herself by others, by Eleanor's mercy, by Theo's forgiveness, by Camilla's sins. Now she was learning to exist without comparison, without the need to explain her survival. A light breeze passed, carrying the faint echo of a street violinist playing Clair de Lune. It reminded her of Eleanor's garden, the tulips, the laughter, the storm that had followed. She closed her eyes, letting the music fill her chest. Every note was memory. The betrayal, the courtroom whispers, the years of rebuilding the bitter mercy she had offered to her daughter-in-law. But the sharp edges had dulled. Time had turned pain into texture, something you didn't erase, just carried differently. She opened her notebook and began to write. "We spend our lives chasing fairness," she wrote. "But justice and peace are not twins. Sometimes peace comes when justice stays silent." Her handwriting was slower now, but each word felt earned. A waiter approached with a smile. "Another espresso, madame?" She nodded. "Please." When he left, she glanced at the newspaper folded beside her plate. On the second page was an article about a small scholarship fund opening in Kansas, the Eleanor Hart Foundation for Education and Family Healing. Theo had named it after his aunt, using the last of his inheritance to establish it. In the photograph, he stood beside the foundation's first recipients, 2 young teachers smiling shyly at the camera. Vivian traced their faces with her finger, tears blurring the print. Eleanor's legacy had outlived them all. And for the first time, Vivian didn't feel envy. She felt gratitude. That night, she walked along the Seine under the amber streetlights. The city murmured softly around her laughter from a passing boat, the rustle of leaves, a church bell far away. She stopped at Pont Neuf, watching the river slide beneath the bridge. Its surface shimmered with light, reflecting everything and nothing. "This is what peace looks like," she whispered. a mirror you don't need to look into. She remembered her younger self, proud, restless forever, demanding more from life than it was willing to give. That woman had been destroyed and rebuilt too many times. Now only the quiet remained. At home, her small apartment was filled with books and sketches, small pieces of a calm existence. On her desk sat a single framed photo, Theo and Camilla's daughter, her grandchild smiling in a garden of lavender. Camilla had kept her word. She had repaid the foundation's debts and disappeared into anonymity. Vivian hadn't seen her in years, but occasionally a card would arrive, brief, formal, but genuine. Perhaps that was redemption enough. Vivian smiled softly. "Maybe grace repeats itself," she murmured. She made tea and stepped onto the balcony. The sunset was beginning. Paris painted in gold and rose. She thought of all the versions of herself. She'd been the jealous sister, the grieving woman, the mother clawing for dignity, the mentor, the widow, the forgiver. Each one had left something behind, and now she was what remained the quiet survivor of her own story. She didn't crave absolution anymore, just stillness. From her radio came the soft murmur of an American podcast she'd begun following, Reddit Family Tales, stories of healing and renewal. She chuckled at the title. If only they knew, she whispered. Some stories never end, they just stop hurting. The host's voice carried over the air. Sometimes forgiveness is not about setting others free. It's about releasing yourself from the weight of what they did. Vivian smiled. Exactly. Later, she walked to her journal again and wrote, "We are not defined by the worst thing we've done, nor by the best thing we've forgiven. We are defined by what we choose to carry forward." She placed the pen down and gazed out at the Paris sky turning indigo. In the distance, the Eiffel Tower lights began to flicker one by one, 1,000 small suns blooming in the night. Vivian felt the weight of her years, settle gently, not as burden, but as crown. A survivor's grace. A woman who had outlived her shame, her envy, her fury, and found at last the quiet beauty beneath them all. The cafe below began to close, the chairs turned upside down, the staff laughing as they wiped tables. Vivian smiled watching them. Life, she realized, continues even when you stop chasing it. That was the final mercy, the stillness after the storm. She whispered to the night, "Thank you, Eleanor, for teaching me that peace is earned, not given." Then she turned off the lights, leaving the window open to the sound of Paris breathing. Peace is not the opposite of conflict. It is what remains when conflict has nothing left to feed on. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms its meaning. Thank you for listening to Vivian's story, a tale of grace, guilt, and quiet triumph. If this journey moved you, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts below. Your voice helps keep stories like this alive, stories that remind us it's never too late to make peace with life. Hello, everyone. My name is Eleanor Hart, and I'm 65 years old. 2 weeks ago, I buried my sweet husband Samuel after 38 years of marriage. He passed from a heart attack at age 67. Last Saturday, I attended my nephew Theo's first birthday party at my sister Vivian's house. That's when Vivian stood up and shocked everyone. She announced that Theo was actually Sam's son, waving around what she claimed was his last will. She demanded half of our $800,000 home as Theo's inheritance. I nearly choked on my cake, trying not to laugh out loud. You see, there was something Vivian didn't know about Sam. I'll tell you everything. First, let me thank you for watching Stories of Auntie May 365. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Karen James from Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for being part of our family. Now let me tell you everything. Sam and I first met 40 years ago at our local Lakeview Community Church bake sale. I was selling my famous apple pies when he approached my table. He bought 3 whole pies claiming they were for his mother, but later confessed he just wanted an excuse to talk to me. "These smell like heaven," he said with the sweetest smile. "Just like the baker." That was Sam, charming and kind to everyone he met. Our first date was the very next evening at Miller's Diner downtown. We talked until the restaurant closed, sharing stories about our families and dreams. Sam worked as a school principal dedicated to helping children learn and grow. He remembered every student's name